SM Warlow is incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to developing science fiction stories. When I was recruiting guests for author awareness, he was one of the first to sign up for season 6. I hope you enjoy my conversation with him. All right, well, Simon, thank you for joining me on the show. How you doing?
Oh, good, thank you. It's
Good.
quite early in the morning here. I have my coffee, so
Yeah,
ready to go.
well, it's super early in the morning here because there's that 8-hour time difference. It's midnight here and 8 a.m. there. Um, okay, so tell me about your work and what you write.
Broadly speaking, science fiction. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. But I'm very sort of big on sort of huge space operas, and the concept I've been working on for the last few years now is sort of a bit of a mishmash of things. So sort of Star Wars, Firefly, bit of Mass Effect, maybe The Expanse if you really want to get a bit technical about it. And really that's sort of my main driver really is to sort of get really interesting science fiction out there that maybe doesn't conform to the sort of generic stuff that's out there today that we see everywhere. So I mean, I'm trying to sort of build a nice big universe that people enjoy.
That's awesome. So how did you get into writing? Was this something that you've always wanted to do, or was it something that you just kind of stumbled upon one day and you're like, this seems like fun?
So I mean, with this series, I had the concept about 16 years ago. Well, you're in that 2020, yeah, so probably about 15, 16 years ago now. I had the concept, but I never did anything with it. It was one of those sort of things like, life gets in the way. At the time I would have been in sort of in higher education, trying to find my feet into a career. So it was one of those things that I just put off for a long time. And then it sort of got to a point about sort of 6 years ago, where I just sort of said, look, nobody's going to write this for me. I don't feel like the industry's going to churn out this concept that I've got. So the only person who can do that is me. So I've been working on this now for about 6 years, 2 books in, but plans laid and ready to go.
And what's now the books are in a series, correct?
Correct, yeah. So the series is under the sort of tagline of Tales of the Phoenix Titan. Book 1, Heritage, came out about 18 months ago, and book 2, Invidious, came out in April.
As a writer, you draw from inspiration. You mentioned Star Wars. You've mentioned Firefly, which Browncoats Unite.
Ooh. Oh yes.
So what are some other inspirations that you have? Do you draw from film, music, nature? What is it that inspires you to write?
So I suppose if we sort of just speak very lightly on on sort of one of the key concepts of the book. So Heritage, the first book in the series. As the title implies, it's got stuff to do with kind of people's backgrounds, that sort of thing. And in that book, first sort of few chapters, you meet a secondary character who is distantly linked or distantly related to sort of a forerunner species who sort of shaped the universe but disappeared mysteriously. That will trope, but she's effectively related to those. And for me, that inspiration sort of came from actually a family story, wherein sort of like during the sort of latter years of his life, my grandfather mapped out his family tree, and he had a very odd sort of parental background himself. So my great grandparents or great grandparents, their background was very sort of disjointed, and there was never kind of any clarity about sort of family mysteries, that sort of thing. So he, before he died, he really went mad and mapped out our entire family. And at the time, found some really interesting things. So, like, we had a relative who was executed for stealing a sheep. We had sort of these guys who migrated between Ireland and the UK and Wales and sort of all over the place. But the big thing he found was that he was distantly related to Cary Grant, the actor, which was really strange because the thing in the media, like, you see he has some Irish family or something like that, but didn't really talk about it. And it turns out they were sort of like cousins or something like that. That was sort of the odd link. So that was sort of one of the inspirational sort of things for one of the key concepts of this story. But then there's so much great stuff out there. So I mean, Garrett Powell, who's very active in the local sort of sci-fi community, absolutely
love to interview him on the show a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Embers of War was excellent. Those 3 books were just so good, and the new stuff's great as well. But I mean, Embers of War, I don't know what it was at the time. I was They're so good, man. Like
It's so good.
I was commuting like all the time, so I remember smashing through those 3 books during my commute, and it was just the highlight. It was so good, man.
What has been one of the hardest parts or the biggest challenges in creating your work?
The challenges. I mean, obviously, self-publishing comes with its own sort of hurdles you have to get through. So, I mean, I guess there's sort of that fear of kind of handing over the work and sort of saying, "Hey, this is the line in the sand I'm going to draw here." That first draft is rough, man. Like you go past the first draft, you edit, you give it to a reader, you edit it again, and you go through that iterative cycle every time. That's quite tough. But to get, especially with the first book, I think with the first book, it was really hard to kind of let that go because I've been holding on to that for about 3 years or something crazy like that. So to actually let that go and be like, hey, this is it. That was tough. I guess then the second big one is sort of the marketing. Really, there's a lot of tools at the disposal of self-publishing, in self-published authors, and it can come in the form of something really basic like Amazon ads or Facebook Meta stuff. But then there's a lot of I don't know the right word for it. There's a lot of accounts that you get people messaging you saying, "Oh, hey, we can help promote your book," or this sort of stuff, and it's trying to sort of mine for gold almost. You sort of you have to find the right sources of promotion. Really, I mean, I tend to stick with sort of the known marketing things that sort of Mark Dawson and then sort of those sort of guys talk about, which is the meta advertising, the sort of the recognized blogs, podcasts, all that sort of thing. But it's a real minefield when you get into how to market your work, really.
So that brings me to the next question. If you could give any advice to other would-be authors out there, what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, I know there's this sort of debate about plotters and pantsers. It's sort of like as a sort of a way to navigate the writing of a book. I mean, I think that's besides the point, if I'm honest with you. So going back to Gareth Earl Powell, who wrote About Writing, the advice guide. One of the best taglines in that book is "Just fucking write it," which is so true. Like, as writers, we're our own worst enemy in this regard, and we get stuck in like loops of putting things off and that sort of thing. And I, for one, I'm a walking example of that because I put off the writing of these books for like a decade and a half. So, I think, just write the thing, even if it's terrible. Like once you've done that first draft, you can rake over, you can edit, you can change things. But once you've got your thoughts down on paper and it's there, you can really sort of bring home your book and get it done. So yeah, absolutely write the thing, like sit down, write. And I guess the other thing, just get to know like other writers in your community, be it like local or on like sort of Facebook groups or Instagram or whatever social media platform you use. Like, I think it's a really great community to sort of be a part of because authors tend to want to see other authors succeed.
How else are you going to get people to help you succeed, without helping them succeed? It's reciprocal.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, even sort of something just as basic as sort of beta readers, when you're going through that editing process, like other authors are really good to cast an eye.
So Simon, we're coming to the end of the interview here. How can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of your books?
Yeah, sure.
What's the best venue for that?
So I guess sort of the main locale for books for me is Amazon. I'm exclusive to Amazon Publishing, so both books are available on paperback, Kindle Unlimited, and then the audiobook is also available on Audible and iTunes. And then the best place to find me really at the moment is my Instagram page, which is SM Warlow _author.
Awesome. Well, Simon, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
If you're interested in picking up copies of Mr. Swallow's work or connecting with him through social media, you can find all of those links down in the video description.